Hi, and welcome to another On the Books, coming to you almost live from the Bowie Media Studios in Bowie, Maryland at the Ken Hill Center. I have with me today Kay Cerise Wright, and a writer from Bowie, Upper Marlboro, who I have known, as a disclaimer, first met at the Bowie Mitchellville Writers Group, which meets every couple weeks or so. And she writes cyber fiction. Tell us about your experience in cyber fiction. Why cyber fiction?
Well, I became familiar with science fiction when I was 3. My father said to me one day, there's a new show on TV. It's about space exploration. Do you want to watch it? So I said, sure. And it was Star Trek. And I've been reading science fiction and watching science fiction ever since then. But one day when I was at work, I saw the book called Neuromancer on my coworker's shelf. And I said, can I borrow this? The cover was god-awful. Nobody would have read it. But on the cover it said, winner of the Philip K. Dick, Hugo, and Nebula Awards. So I said, well, it can't be too bad. So I read it, and I loved it. I was enthralled with it.
Amazing first page when he describes the TV screen. Mm-hmm. It looks like a TV screen.
The color of sky was the...
Yes, that hooked me.
Yes.
I had to finish that
Beautiful
book.
Writing.
Yes. Gibson. And that actually is the start of cyberpunk.
Yes.
As a genre.
Right. He's considered the progenitor of the cyberpunk genre.
And he's the first person to ever use the word cyberspace.
Cyberspace, yes.
I think it was on page 24, but I'm not positive.
And I thought it was interesting that Ridley Scott's Blade Runner had come out, I think, in '84, before he had written Neuromancer, and he was depressed because he said Ridley Scott had gotten the environment that he wanted, that Gibson wanted to craft in his book. But of course, it all melds together.
Oh,
we all love it.
Right, absolutely. And so you would agree that that's the beginning of cyberpunk.
Yes.
And where has it gone?
Cyberpunk has gone from being the traditional, in the near future with the noir dystopian background, to far-flung worlds, in Richard K. Morgan's books. Mm-hmm. And it's gone to biopunk and all these other punks, steampunk and clock punk and diesel punk. And it's just, some of it's gotten a little out of hand.
Well, I think that's okay. Where does your punk fit in?
My punk, I think it's more traditional type of punk. It's near future. We have an AI, we have body modifications, we have technology, we have the noir, dystopian. Although it's not too dystopian, but we do have the sinister corporations.
Well, I sometimes have trouble explaining to my students exactly what the word dystopian means.
Dystopian environment usually has urban decay, rampant drug use, pollution, oppression, things of that nature. It's sort of reminiscent of the noir scene back in the 40s. Mm-hmm. After World War II, people were they weren't too cheery. They didn't have a cheery disposition, so the art reflected the people's.
You mean, and the pulpers?
Yes.
Everybody was, Gibson never wrote in the pulps.
I don't think so. The pulps were more popular in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, right?
Right. They started to die after the war, but some people think they're coming back, and of course everybody's seen that famous movie, Pulp Fiction.
Exactly.
I would love to be a pulp writer. I would just love it. So you've actually published many things.
Yes. Mostly short stories and poems. Mm-hmm. Cog is my only novel so far.
Cog is, I've read Cog. It's not the only reason you're here, but it's a big one. It's extraordinarily well done.
Thank you.
I mean, in my view, it's not just good writing, it's a good story. Reminds me a little of the president-elect of the United States in some ways.
Really?
Maybe he could go into a coma. No, that's a political statement, and I apologize for it. It's amazing. You read the first page of Cog, and the story's there.
Yes. I did that on purpose because I don't like books that have a big info dump in the beginning. You have to sort of slog through it and sort of get a sense of the world. And I think a lot of people are put off by the word science fiction. They say, oh, I don't like it. Maybe they think it's, you know, from the pulps from the 50s. Maybe they think it's Star Wars. So I tried to sort of hook the reader with a family squabble because everybody has a family of some sort.
Right.
So they can relate to that. And then I bring them slowly into the cyberpunk world.
And how is your story dystopian?
Well, we have a corporation with an AI that's trying to take over people. Well, I don't want to give too much of the book away.
Right. What do they call it? Spoiler. No spoilers on the books.
We have rampant drug use. We have oppression. So there's some noir aspects there, some dystopian aspects. It's not all.
Okay, and
all
you say
dystopian.
this is in the future? No.
It's set in the future.
Okay.
But we can all relate because we've all.
And
Cyberpunk has a lot of different tropes.
right, and artificial intelligence is a major theme in your book. It's a monstrous theme in Gibson.
Yes, definitely.
To try to destroy this artificial intelligence. Why do you think it should be destroyed? Is it a bad thing?
Well, I think it's what it's modeled on. I mean, Star Trek touched on it with the M5 computer, and it was based on.
And the holograph room.
Yeah, exactly, the holodeck. But it depends on what it's based on. And, you know, is it going to be based on an altruistic human? But if it's going to learn in the reality, it's sort of like a child growing up not knowing anything. But once it learns about the world, how is it going to react to it? And we just don't know. And there are some scientists who have said, no, we don't need to do AI. And others, of course, have said, yes, we need to do it. So I think we need to have a limited one and see how it reacts.
Well, it's been said to me that in 10 years, AI will do every job we have. Is that a good thing or is that a dystopian thing?
I think that's a dystopian thing because people need work. They need something to do. They need something to motivate them to get out of bed and, you know, follow their heart's desires. And of course we could do that, but you're not going to get health care. You're not going to get a salary. You're just going to get, you know, satisfaction of doing what you want to do. If we don't have something that's going to give people what they need, health care and a salary and things like that, then that's going to be an issue.
So we can't find a way to do that.
I'm not saying we can't find a way. I'm just saying it's going to take, you know.
So if someone wrote that story, would that be cyberpunk?
It could be cyberpunk, but I think it would be going away from dystopian toward a utopia where you're going to involve the politicians and the business people, the consumers, the educators, the scientists. You're going to have to find a way to support people even with machines doing all of our work. You know.
An author named Jane McGonigal, I didn't mention this in our pre-discussion, she wrote a book called Reality is Broken. Is reality broken? I mean, are we bored stiff?
Well, yeah, I think most jobs people find boring and they just go to them for the health care and the salary.
Okay.
And, you know, when I work for a management consulting firm and I get stuck in traffic and I'm just thinking, you know, I'm one of the lemmings that's just going to work and coming home and doing it all over again the next day. And I would love to just,
So it's not hard.
it's not hard, it's just tedious.
And you think we like hard.
I think we need hard to grow.
Okay.
Yes.
And McGonagall takes that same position. It's a great read, that book. It's older now, but
I'll have to pick it up.
it's a great book. So you're a writer.
Yes.
You talk about being stuck in traffic.
Yes.
You're a semi-retired mom because your kids are growing up. Where do you find the time to write?
I write. I'm a night owl, so I'll write at night mostly. I can think while I'm stuck in traffic. I can research. I can listen to books on tape, other writers, see how they write, and then. But when it comes to putting words on paper, I will write at night, and I like to write. I like to start off longhand writing with the pen and paper. I love the feel, the texture, seeing the words, being able to, you know, cross it out and move it here. And well, once I get into a story, then I can move on to the computer. But when I start a story, I like to.
So when you wrote Cog, and this is the book, and you can find it on Amazon. Did you know the story before you started scribbling?
No, I'm not in. Well, there's different kind of writers. There's the pantsers, as you know, right by the seat of their pants.
That's me. No question. That's why I don't finish anything, but go ahead.
And they're the outliners who have to outline everything and make sure it goes like this. And I'm more of a pantser, but I need to outline or I'll wind up in the weeds somewhere. So I need a sort of like a roadmap for me to go to. But I'm also an onioner because I write in layers because I love the action. I'll lay down the action first, all the characters, what they're doing, the subplots. Then I'll go back and I'll put in more descriptive narrative because people like that. They don't want to be in a green room with no description, just two talking heads.
Okay, was the first page of Cog the first thing you wrote after all the thinking?
But it wasn't the same. It went through many iterations. I wrote Cog as a thesis for my master's degree at Seton Hill University in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, because I wanted to write a book. I wanted to write cyberpunk, but I didn't know how to write a book. So I said, well, let me get into a creative writing program. And I would call them and ask if they had a science fiction program, and many of them said, no, we don't do science fiction.
No, we're literary fiction here. Oh, we don't believe in plot and action. No, it's all character.
Exactly.
Oh, excuse me.
So I found a writing program that featured science fiction, and so we have critique partners and our mentor. Because it was low residency, I only went on campus twice a year. So I kept doing chapter 1, and they kept critiquing
to pay the bills.
Exactly. So I kept doing chapter 1 over and over and over. I wasn't satisfied with it, so I just moved on. And then I think a lot of writers do that. They go back to chapter 1 because now that the book is done, after you finish everything, you can go back and you can put in foreshadowing and maybe, you know, that's another layer that.
So you think writers do that on purpose?
On what on purpose?
Foreshadowing.
Oh,
and
definitely.
symbolism.
Yes. Yes. Well, I think the good writers do. With the bad writers, things just come out of nowhere.
Well, that's another show. I got a lot of out of nowheres, but no, I understand. And when do you switch from longhand, or do you?
I do. When I get a better sense, a good sense of the characters and what they're doing and where they're going with the plot, then I can switch to typing on the computer.
Okay. At what point did you know how COG would end?
Probably the next to the last chapter.
Okay.
Some writers write the ending first and they go back in the beginning.
Some people do.
Yeah.
When did did the characters ever take over?
They can take over, especially the villains, because the villains, want to do what they want to do, and everybody get out of their way, and so it's fun writing villains.
Especially in cyberpunk.
Exactly.
Everybody likes the bad boys.
And I have a character in there named Tuma, who I think a lot of readers have said they like, and Thea, the spy. Everyone likes spies too, right?
The son was the daughter. They were both interesting.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Yeah, I tried to make my protagonist interesting.
When did they start? Well, some people claim that you get into it, the characters take over. They start determining what you write about them.
I think it depends on the writer. If they're really into their characters, then that can happen. I'm more into plot and figuring out what my characters are going to do. Of course, it should arise naturally from your character's motivations. But I liked writing the action. I like, yes, my characters have personalities, and I want to show that. But I was more interested in the action and what's going to happen and the secrets
now
and the
I
twists.
teach, as I said earlier, I teach school. I teach young kids. How do I teach them to write? I mean, what should I do to get kids or if you don't know, say it. But how do you get kids to want to put things down on the paper?
And that's hard because kids nowadays are into their phones or into tech, and actually writing just seems old-fashioned, I'm sure. But you can start with small things like flash fiction and, give me 3 to 5 sentences on your trip into school today, something like that.
Okay. Now, at a school I was at, you mentioned texting. Some kids write 2,000 texts a month.
Mm-hmm.
They average 10 words a text, which is about what they do. That's a lot of words.
It's a lot of words, but it's not cohesive in a story.
There are many in my first draft. No, I understand that. Is there a way? Cyberpunk's about technology.
Well, there's many different aspects of cyberpunk.
Right, but I mean, technology,
it's
and you wrote in the essay, it's hard to write cyberpunk without technology.
True.
I don't mean technology to write it, but in the story.
Right.
And yet you write longhand.
I know, it's kind of a dichotomy.
Now, some people think that the heroes are the people who want to destroy the technology and the dystopia and the overriding oppression of the technology.
Right.
Could those oppressive things actually be the heroes? Or would it make it something else?
Are you talking about the oppressive things being the corporations trying to...
Yes, maybe they're not so oppressive.
Well, they could be. Maybe they're trying to keep people from harming themselves through technology, through genetic manipulation, through evolution.
Oh, what? I can't remember when you get old, your brain starts to whack out. Brave New World.
Ah, yes, exactly. Decanting different people and making sure that, well, that's more the caste system, because we make you this way, and you're going to stay that way. And that's sort of a reflection of racial issues in the United States, because slavery, you know, you're a slave and you're going to stay that way. You're going to be subservient. We made you that way. And then we made, you know, these smart people over here, and they're going to run everything, you know, and you slaves can't, you know, aspire to be part of the ruling class, because that's not how.
So do I hear you saying that technology and manufacturing destroy free will?
I'm saying it can. And technology is just sort of not inert, but it doesn't have its own agenda. It's the people who are using it have the agenda.
So in your stories, can you make a person without free will? I mean, is that a possibility? Or is it doomed, or are we doomed to never have peace because we always have free will?
I think humans are born with free will, and if it's suppressed, then that's going to be an issue.
Okay.
Because it's through the long march of evolution, man has had to overcome challenges and hardships, and that will is there. And if you try to oppress it, you're going to have to do it at the genetic level, in my opinion. And how do you do that? Can you do it at the genetic level and still wind up with a person?
There were some Germans that gave it a try.
Well, that's true, but we'll see what happens.
And the fact, we're still doing a lot of the things that but with controls.
Right, exactly.
I mean, not just lunatics. Well, I shouldn't call them lunatics because, well, I didn't know any of them. But they did some interesting things, especially when the full moon was out there, where the term comes from. But anyway, I'm sort of getting off track. I do that a lot. You probably remember that from the writers' groups. What's the future hold for you and your writing?
For me and my writing, I am working on a second book. And I think with cyberpunk, science fiction in general nowadays, it's more slipstream. It can take in elements of fantasy or horror and weave them in and make a story. It doesn't have to be in one genre. I think it could take tropes or aspects from different genres. I wrote a horror story recently that's going to be coming out in an anthology called Sycorax's Daughters. And it's about this spy in China, and she can change her appearance at the cellular level. But every time she goes through a transformation, it causes a lot of pain, and eventually it drives her insane. It's the psychological horror. So I think it has aspects of horror and science fiction.
So you don't feel trapped by the genre?
No. I think you can take aspects of other genres and weave them in. I think the audience is definitely ready for that.
I mentioned that I like pulp magazines. I still read Ellery Queen and Alfred Hitchcock, although I showcase them at Barnes & Noble.
I remember an Ellery Queen story about these two identical houses, and they were guests there, and they were drugged at night and moved to another house, but it was on the different side, so the sun came up in the different window, and the detective said, there must be two identical houses.
Well, I mean, and Twilight Zone, I always loved Twilight Zone.
Oh, yes, definitely. Outer Limits.
I'm a secret X-Files fan.
Why? You don't have to be secret.
Well, I'm just sort of joking, but yes, I love the X-Files. Friday nights was Scully and Mulder. That was, it's back on now.
Yes.
On one, I forget which one of the TV channels, and I can't mention them. But
they've made 2 or 3 movies, right?
Oh, they've had movies too, and actually, the woman who played Scully did some British mysteries, and they're very, very well done.
She does theater too, I think.
Yes, she does. She's a many-faceted actor.
Gillian Anderson.
Right. Scully. But anyway, so when you wrote Cog, did it just come, or did the genre, I don't want to say box you in, but did you write to the genre?
I tried because I was new to the genre. I hadn't read Neuromancer until 2004, and I was enthralled. I loved it. I loved the action. I loved the tight writing. And I went online to look up cyberpunk, and everybody said cyberpunk's dead. You know, it doesn't exist anymore. And I was like, no. So I wrote it anyway, and my mentor said, "You sure you want to write this because it's dead?" And I said, "No, I have to write it because I love it, and other people are going to love it too." And I was on another interview, and they said,
stuck his pinky out, and sipped his wine, and said, "No, you're sure?" No, I'm glad you did, because I had a great experience with the book. But then I had a great experience with its progenitor, with Gibson's Neuromancer. Now, you also talk about postmodernism in your essay.
Yes, I wrote an essay for many genres, many crafts. One craft, many genres.
Okay, but actually, it was another writer who's actually appeared here a few times. We have an ongoing conversation about whether, do you want people to read this?
Yes, I do. I think it's a fun ride.
And did that influence your writing?
I wrote mainly for myself, but the one thing that I did write for the reader was the action. I love action. I love fast-moving books. I don't want to be bogged down in a lot of descriptive narrative. So I try to leave a cliffhanger on every chapter so that it would make the reader want to, well, at 3 in the morning, they can't put it down. So I really tried to do that.
Okay. Well, the writer I was speaking of, he claims that he doesn't care if anybody ever reads this, if anybody ever reads it. But he does, we all do. But he says it doesn't stop him. Well, it's like Herman Melville. I love the guy. Nobody really read Moby Dick till the 1930s. It took that long to discover it, really.
But that was a different style of writing back then. People didn't have, you know, their time in jobs and commuting. They could sit down and read pages and pages of descriptive narrative, I think.
Okay, so do you envision, we're wrapping a lot of things into this discussion. Would you like to someday be a professional writer, not do anything else?
No, I think I have ADD, and I like to do a lot of different things. I prefer short stories, so I have a lot more short stories than I do novels. And I want to do film. That's my
definitely
next thing.
going to have you back because our discussion could go on and on. But everybody, please stay tuned to Ms. Wright, Cerise. I mispronounced it for a long time, but stay tuned with her. Stay tuned with On the Books. And if you want to write to me, do it in care of Bowie Media Center. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.